Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe. Thanks for your support on Patreon, disrespectfully classy Marky Blassie. Hello and welcome to the WrestleTalk Super News! I'm Ollie Davis. Poke the thumbs up button in the eye and please give us a subscribe and tell your friends to give us a subscribe and anyone you know actually, as it's the most important thing you can do to help this channel grow on our Support WrestleTalk 2020 campaign to reach 1 million subscribers. I hope you can all see over the last week we've taken your feedback on board and really toned down the clickbait style titles. With that said, I'm now going to talk about the possibilities of CM Punk returning to WWE. It's the news! I can't not report on the wrestling news on the WrestleTalk news! Just because it's CM Punk. CM Punk return confirmed. In a quick recap of the Punk saga so far, he left WWE in early 2014 because of creative frustrations, misdiagnosed injuries, not getting a WrestleMania main event, and a whole load of other things. He was served his termination papers later that year on his wedding day to the then still contracted WWE wrestler AJ Lee, totally a coincidence. And in the following years, had a defamation lawsuit allegedly funded by WWE against him by one of their doctors. In that time, he tried his hand at TV presenting, comic book writing, and MMA fighting, all to varying degrees of success. It seemed he had finally put his wrestling career firmly behind him. But then, in April this year, Punk actually returned to the ring for independent promotion MKE Wrestling under a mask to hit a very rusty go-to-sleep and help his former trainer Ace Steel win his match. And according to some reports, he'd actually been making similar disguised wrestling appearances for years. A few months after that, amidst reports he could be warming to a wrestling return, the natural fit seemed like Vince McMahon's new rival promotion, AEW. Speculation that only intensified when he was announced as the headline stage show for their sister convention Starrcast in August. But he then started to dismiss any AEW talks in public interviews, saying their approaches weren't professional enough. And it was around this time that PW Insider started reporting Punk was auditioning to be a presenter on WWE's new studio show, WWE Backstage. The key here was that this would be a show produced by Fox, not WWE, so Punk wouldn't have to answer to the likes of Vince McMahon or Triple H, which is good because it seems like he really hates them. Multiple very reliable news sources reported his audition alongside Renee Young went really well, with the Wrestling Observer even claiming Fox had offered him the job. Triple H then said in interviews last week, never say never about a full in-ring WWE comeback for Punk, and that Vince McMahon could be open to his return. But then the also very reliable Sean Ross Sapp over at Fightful reported last week that Fox executives seemed like they'd moved on from Punk. And Punk himself revealed last week in an interview that he hadn't heard anything from them since his audition. So either nothing is going to happen and Fox have moved on from Punk as a co-host, or it's all a giant worky McWork face, a technical term for when pro wrestling misleads us all to create a surprise. And perhaps a worky McWork face is truly afoot, as Renee Young has teased a huge announcement for this Friday's SmackDown. WWE Backstage co-host Young has posted a clip on WWE on Fox's Twitter account where she runs down the lineup for this Friday's episode. We're going to have a taped message from John Cena. The Gronk is going to be checking in to see what's going on. And for our very first guest, huge news. It's going to be announced on Friday night SmackDown. It's a very big deal. I promise you don't want to miss it. WWE Backstage has been in the works for quite a while, as part of Fox's strategy to position wrestling as a more sports-orientated product on their network. Good luck with that. To fit in with and be able to cross-promote with their other audiences and studio shows for the NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. While WWE Backstage has actually already aired a few special episodes, including a really good installment after last Friday's SmackDown, which had a great interview with Finn Balor, the full version of the show is going to debut properly next Tuesday, the 5th of November. Renee hosting with Booker T was always reported to be a temporary pairing, with the proper panel debuting on their November 5th show, which is when the initial CM Punk reports had him returning. But it's all still speculation at this point. Educated guess speculation, sure, with 4 of the most reliable news sources out there, the Wrestling Observer, PW Insider, Fightful, and Pro Wrestling Sheet, all corroborating Punk will feature on the show at some point over the last month. But there's nothing really to base this on. Oh yeah, Punk teased it himself on Instagram. In an Instagram story post that Ringside News News claimed to have captured. Not a very reliable source, but all the graphics match up with Punk's verified Gram account. Yeah, I said Gram. I'm hip. I'm cool. Punk posted a picture of a Fox Sports microphone with the caption, LOL. Instagram stories are deleted after 24 hours unless saved as a highlight, and Ringside News claim this Punk post was made 2 days ago, so it can't be verified against Punk's official Instagram account. Punk was doing the media rounds last week to promote the release of his leading man debut, The Girl on the Third Floor, interviews where most of the recent Punk stories have been lifted from, so he just could have been at Fox to talk about that, but saw a Fox Sports microphone and snapped a picture because he's trolling. What? But that, along with earlier reports that Punk had been offered the position, and WWE now promoting huge news, which Renee points out is our very first guest instead of a non-personnel announcement, all heavily hints that after everything that's happened in the last 5 years, we could be seeing CM Punk return to WWE. What are your feelings about that? Will it happen? Should it happen? And is it all a swerve to join AEW? CM Punk to AEW confirmed. Let me know in the comments because I'll be replying to people from out of nowhere. I mean, they sure need the ratings, because if cucking angles aren't drawing in 2019, then what can work? Hot off the terrible SmackDown ratings from last Friday, which did have massive competition against the World Series, and the negative impact of being bumped from their new channel Fox to the lesser FS1, but was still under half the expected audience from WWE, drawing the worst viewership for the show ever by quite some way to just 888,000, which that same week's episode of AEW Dynamite actually beat with 963,000. WWE Raw has just pulled in another very disappointing figure. Numbers and stats segue. Monday's episode of Raw lost over 200,000 viewers from the previous week, dropping to just 2.13 million, which the Wrestling Observer point out is the third worst non-holiday number in modern history. Just as interesting is how the Divorce Court main event segment was a significant loser, with the third hour dropping 400,000 viewers since the show started, showing that the Rusev, Lana and Bobby Lashley love triangle storyline might be fun from a car crash TV perspective, but it's actively turning a large part of the audience off. But there's a very different story on YouTube, where the clipped version of that segment has already become one of the most watched WWE videos of the year at 4.5 million. Well done, internet. It's no wonder that main roster wrestlers are trying to escape up to NXT. Not down anymore, you get moved up to developmental from now on. In the debut episode of the first ever official WWE podcast After the Bell with Corey Graves, his guest Triple H spoke about whether we'll see more main roster wrestlers move up to NXT after Finn Balor's return there earlier this month. I do, yeah. There are going to be times when WWE's creative team is like, look, until the next draft comes or whatever, this talent is here, but they've kind of worked with everybody. Great. Give them to me, I'll take them. Which means they can get rebuilt in NXT to once more become properly over three-dimensional stars. And then we have to relive that disappointment all over again when they're called back up to the main roster. I mean, down to the main roster. Balor is one of those stars who has become one of the hottest things in wrestling since returning to NXT and going heel on last Wednesday's episode. In an interview with Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated, he described how that shock moment created some production issues on the night. When I went backstage, the producer told me that the only reason they hit my music was because there was zero audible noise in the venue. People were so in shock that there was no noise, and they were afraid that was going to translate poorly on TV, so they hit the music. The plan was to go out to boos, but that's not what we got. We got pure, emotional silence. It was a very effective turn, which Balor has described as a combination of the squeaky clean babyface in Japan, the Bullet Club heel in Japan, the Demon and every Demon entrance. It's a combination of everything I've ever done for the last 20 years. To call it a return to Prince Devitt Bullet Club is an understatement. It's well known that Triple H loves a faction, and now he's got back the original leader of one of the biggest wrestling factions in the last decade, the Bullet Club. So Balor is teasing he's already thinking about recruiting. There are a couple of people I've been thinking about. I don't know if it's possible, but I'm very, very, very interested in AOP. Those two guys are two of the meanest guys in this business. If I have a chance to create a Balor Club in any brand, I'd want those guys back backing me up. It's not just NXT and AEW with the Wednesday night wars though. Tuesday night has also become a battleground with NWA Power, AEW Dark, and now the relaunched Impact Wrestling on Access TV all airing at the same time. And yesterday's debut episode of Impact saw Sami Callihan, one of my personal favourite heels in the whole world, win his first ever Impact World title from Brian Cage in a steel cage match with a super pile driver off the second turnbuckle.
What is this now? What is this?
Is he gonna pile? Hey, pile
driver off the top turnbuckle, my God!
Sami Callihan turns the champion over. Brian Cage is down. The machine is out, and Sami Callihan is world champion. Introduce the world to Impact Wrestling on Access TV. Sami Callihan has become world champion.
Shocking turn of events here. I had Brian Cage winning this match all the way. And my prediction, say what you will about that man. He wrestled his ass off tonight. He left it all in the ring. And he's your new world champion.
You're the man, Sami. Now slap Simon Miller's head. Breaking news, WWE have just announced Crown Jewel will have a women's match. Find out all the details by clicking the video on the right, and how are Vince McMahon and Triple H booking Seth Rollins versus The Fiend. Find out what I think's going down in the brand new episode of WrestleSketch by clicking the video below that. I've been Ollie Davis, and that was wrestling.